Hi, I thought I'd show you some of the plants which are on the nursery. We're in August, and August is often, for a lot of people, a dead month in their gardens. They don't like it. It's between your May, June, really great, fantastic flowers are coming through, your roses start budding. You've usually done a lot of deadheading of your roses, and you've started to cut back your perennials. And it's what can you put in that will take over, so you've still got colour in the garden. Now, I'll show you a small selection here, and then you look at your garden and see whether something that we have here might be suitable. Now, this is Veronica. Very handy having coloured labels. This is Georgia Blue. It's an evergreen mound forming plant with amazing beautiful blue flowers with a tiny little yellow centre. Really, really productive in the garden. Being evergreen, you'll always have it. It takes away some of the bare earth that often covers over the winter, and being a perennial, it's really, really efficient. A lot of people have heard of Shasta daisies, Leucanthemums. Now, I've got Aglaia here, multi-petaled, with an open yellow centre. This actually is fantastic if you want to attract bees and butterflies to your garden. The centre is an open pollinating centre, so the bees can get hold of the nectar. Now, these are in a pot, so they're a little bit behind. They've gone over slightly, but in the garden they actually would be 80-90 centimetres, and they're clump forming, so they really bulk up well and stand up to the rigours of our climate, also our soil in Suffolk. I've got the good old-fashioned sedum. Now, this is Ruby Glow. Now, sedums are succulents. As it happens, we've had the first real big downpour yesterday, so they are holding water. But in the weather that we just had here in Suffolk, where we had 52 days of no rain, these plants hold up to it. So if you've got a really dry part of the garden where not many things grow, sedums will. This one is a mound former. It's got beautiful red leaves, which are very tactile actually. Leave the heads on over winter. You've got winter structure. Trim them back in the spring for the next year's growth. Absolutely beautiful in the garden, and something that stands out. There's not many red leaves that we have in perennials, and this one works particularly well. As you can see, the flowers are just starting to come on these ones, and they are the most beautiful glowing red. So not just red leaf, but the beautiful red flower. Another favourite, Mondana. Mondana carries you through. Now this has actually flowered, I've cut it back. These go for about 4 to 5 weeks, so quite a long flowering period for a perennial. And this one's Aquarius. As you can see by the picture, she's got a hooked shaped leaf, and again is another huge attractor for bees and butterflies. Fantastic, as the centre is open able for pollination. Now these are quite tall, so they stand out. They are clump forming, and one plant with 2 years you will have a good large dinner plate size clump. You get a long season, and again I've cut the heads off because they're on the nursery, but if you left the heads on, you've got shape over winter, provided they don't collapse. Now Coreopsis is an early flower. It flowers June, July, so these have all been cut back. But these go on forever. You've probably got a good 3 months of flowering on these. Again, up to 1 metre in height, bright yellow. Tick seed is the common name, and this is golden gain. Sorry, that was a wasp. I'm not good with wasps. And it will go on forming huge clumps. Don't put too much in. It's a really strong yellow, so it is somewhere that you want to attract people's eyes to. Again, its height is tall. It's a good 80 to 1 metre. It puts up with our clay soil beautifully, and the beauty of Suffolk clay soil is on plants which would normally really run in a light loamy sand, the clay holds them so it doesn't take over the garden. If this is in light soil, a loamy light sandy soil, it will spread hugely. Its roots just run. But for us in Suffolk and Norfolk, we're fine. Okay. I've got a couple of hostas on the nursery, and let me try and get one out. This is Fortunella albopicta. Now these are everybody's nightmare, including some of us snails and slugs. I've put these into our woodland garden and I mulched probably a good 4 inches of bark chippings, and the ones which are in the woodland garden haven't got snail damage or slug damage. These ones are showing a little bit. Whenever you buy a plant from the nursery, just lift it up and see if there's any slugs or snails. There isn't on this one. It's not long since I bought these in from a local grower. But beautiful, lovely young leaves that come through, and then a gorgeous flower spike with a mauve flower on the top. So gives a little bit of added contrast. These are semi-shade to full shade. Don't put your hostas in the sun. You won't get the beauty of the colour on the leaves because they'll just bleach out. We have another hosta that's just starting to show her leaves. I cut these right back. And this is wide brim. And you can see how I've cut them back. It just got the edges. A little bit like Patriot, except for Patriot's a bit whiter on its edges. This one's got a more of a yellow edge to it. And again, a large flower spike, that's mauve. Look fantastic in a pot. Now, our all-time favourite, the penstemons. Oh, look at that flower. Isn't that beautiful? Now, these ones are apple blossom. They come out quite dark, and then when the flower actually opens, it's a paler pink. Absolutely lovely in the garden as a centre point. Very much a country garden, this plant. But once you get them in and get them established, they do clump up quite well. Ooh, little bit of protection from the sun there. Put them in a very sunny position in well-drained soil, and they just flower forever. They're not good as a cut flower, but as a flower in your garden, they are absolutely beautiful. Now that's just a short selection of what we've got. I won't bore you totally. Coming up to autumn time, colour in the garden is very interesting. It tends to go the oranges, the reds, the yellows, really strong, possibly why we call it autumnal colours. Now I've got a couple of Crocosmias, or Mombricias, some people call it. This is George Davidson. Now, these clump up big. Now, George Davidson is approximately 60 to 80 centimetres depending on the soil. If you've got an open soil, then you'll get huge clumps of them. Don't put too many in. Often people overplant. In Suffolk clay, we're okay. They do spread out. And after about 5 years, depending on your soil, it's worth lifting and splitting them. Either give them to a friend or spread them around the garden. They're one of the best value plants you'll ever have in your garden. The strap-like leaves give movement and texture, and then you get the beautiful Crocosmia flowers. Now, I've also got Castlewall Lake. Castlewall Lake will go on until October flowering. Striking colour difference. This is more what people expect when you say Crocosmia. They always expect it orange, but Crocosmia comes from George Davidson being yellowy through the oranges to Lucifer, which is a really strong red Crocosmia. These look fantastic when mixed in the garden with grasses. It gives a lot of movement. The grasses have got a lot of movement, but so do the plants. But beautiful colour that comes through. And the flowers last for 4 to 6 to 8 weeks on a Crocosmia. So it gives you good value. Coming up early in the season, you've got the green of the strap leaves and then the flowers late in the season. So it's a good all-round plant. Just pop these back. Now, the lupins are at the end of their season, but you can just see this is a canary yellow. It's quite an unusual lupin in its colouring, and again, it's a plant that gives you quite a lot of value in its shape of its leaves, the texture. I do like stroking them. The flower heads, now these clump up quite big. They're not too tall. A lot of people have a problem with lupins because they can, if they're too tall in the own windy side, them collapsing. But these clump up quite a decent size in quite a short period of time. And again, another plant that looks good with the grasses as a contrast. Now, foliage is one of those things that sometimes we overlook, and it's a shame really. And I say to people, have you thought of putting grasses in your garden? And they think lawn, they don't necessarily think ornamental grasses. There is a phenomenal range of grasses that you can get. I've got a few which you can see behind me, and I bought these ones in so that we've got a little bit of contrast. The one I was showing you with the other plants, this is Morning Light. Now she doesn't grow too big, she's a clumper, so you don't have running, so you haven't got a problem. And her flower stems will be coming up soon. I can see one just starting to form in the middle there. And her flower has a long stem to about 80 centimetres with the palest fronds of pale pink. So the strapping has got a touch of white margins on the edges, and when these move it adds that beautiful sparkle to an area. Hinjo is a variant of the zebra grasses, and gold bar. She has got a stripe that goes across, irregularly. So, there we are, the wind's showing you exactly what they do. A lot of light bounces off this plant, so you get quite a strong colour point in the garden. And again, her flowers, this is a flower spike coming up here, so for into autumn and over winter with grasses, you've got the flower head. So you've got beautiful flower head that comes up about 1 metre tall. Again, she's got a pink lustrous tinge to her flower, very feathery, the flower heads on the grasses. And then leave the flower heads on. If you're not in too windy an area, leave the flower heads on, and it's a lovely overwinter architectural structure that's in the garden. Now this is one of my favourite grasses. This is Seberfielder. Now most of the grasses were actually bred by German botanists. So you'll often see some of the famous Dutch and German growers are the most prolific breeders of grasses. All the grasses originally, as you can tell by the names, these are all miscanthus, and they were all originally oriental, brought in the 1800s into Germany, and the most famous breeders were in the Dutch in the 30s and 40s. And we've still got some really prolific Dutch breeders bringing in different variations. They're crossing them. So Hinjo, this one, is a cross of Zebrianus and Gold Bra, and it's smaller. So they're breeding certain elements that add interest to the garden. Seberfielder is a monster. Absolutely fantastic for back of a garden where you want some height and you want some movement. She will do 1.5 meters quite easily, and they clump. As you can see, she's just starting to put out new shoots. She will form a large mound, a large clump of grass. And again, she's got a silvery, feathery flower spike that comes up, and these ones come up about October, so it gives that extra interest that allows you to push on into the winter. So there's a little bit of choice on the nursery, and we'll be adding to it over the next couple of months, so that there's plenty for you to see. Grasses love our soil in Suffolk. We don't have an issue with them. They grow beautifully and they look wonderful. I'm going to show you some other plants, so just take a break, go and get a coffee.